This is iDesign Lab, a podcast where creativity and curiosity meet style and design. Curator of interiors, furnishings, and lifestyles. Hosted by Tiffany Woolley, an interior designer and a style enthusiast, along with her serial entrepreneur husband, Scott. iDesign Lab is your ultimate design podcast, where we explore the rich and vibrant world of design and its constant evolution in style and trends. iDesign Lab provides industry insight, discussing the latest trends, styles, and everything in between to better help you style your life through advice from trendsetters, designers, influencers, innovators, fabricators, and manufacturers, as well as personal stories that inspire, motivate, and excite. And join us on this elevated, informative, and lively journey into the world of all things design. Today on the iDesign Lab, we're joined by Anthony Caliendo, entrepreneur, international best-selling author, motivational speaker, chef, and the powerhouse behind Florida's #1 business brokerage. From dominating Wall Street to producing hit films and launching his own food empire, the Main Man does it all with unmatched drive and charisma. Get ready to be inspired.
Welcome to the iDesign Lab podcast. Today we have Anthony Caliendo in our house here, who is the main man who has designed quite a life.
Yes.
An entrepreneurial life at that. Mm-hmm. So tell us the main man.
Oh, well, so I'm going to give you the story of the main
Tell
man
us a little
first.
about yourself.
So we'll give you kind of what led up to the main man also.
Okay.
Right? So,
because you have trucks, vehicles, you have like a lot with it.
I'm a branding guy.
You
right?
are.
At the end of the day,
The
I say this in one of my
international man of
books called The
branding.
Sales Assassin that I wrote. It was my first book that I wrote. And if you're not remembered, you're forgotten.
Right.
And that's the problem with most people, that
Yeah.
you need to be remembered, and when people remember you, you can contact them 5 years, 10 years down the road, and they don't forget you.
yeah.
So how do you get people not to forget
To be
you?
unforgettable.
Unforgettable. I'm an unforgettable guy,
Yeah.
So as a kid, always had a dream of being successful, grew up with a mother who raised 3 kids, and we were poor. We didn't have much money.
Where did you grow up?
So in Chicago, and then moved down to Florida, believe it or not, when I was 12. And my mom transferred down to Florida, and she met a nice Jewish guy named Don Beagle. He's still today the only Jewish guy I ever met that couldn't make money. That's a funny joke, but it's true, right? So having a childhood where you have a bad deck of cards, right? Sometimes people don't get lucky, like my wife and my kids, who we have 8 kids. They're in a different position. I was in a position where I had to go out there and change my stars. Right?
I love that.
So the only way to change your stars is to figure out roughly what you need to do. So my grandfather as a kid, and I'm kind of going back a little bit so you understand my mentality of thinking,
sure.
right? Because with every person, there's something inside of them that triggers them, that makes them move, that makes them go, that makes them
That
tick,
moment,
right?
yeah.
So as a kid, my grandfather said to me, he said, Anthony, your father's not around. Your mother's raising 3 kids. What are you doing? I said, I'm 12 years old. I'm in school. He said, what are you going to school for? I says, what do you mean? You go to school when you're my age.
Yeah.
He goes, listen to me. You're a man of the house, even though you're 12. We're an old school Italian family. You need to go get jobs. You need to help your mother. Oh. And I'm like, okay, he's got a point. So I said, well, why do you say that? He goes, nothing against teachers. They do an amazing job. They teach children. They sacrifice. But the only thing a teacher is really going to teach you is how to be broke. And I said, what do you mean? He says, nothing against teachers. I don't want to get the wrong thing here, in your head, because they're amazing people, teachers. But they're not going to show you how to become very successful and to make a lot of money. And they're in a position where they're probably never going to make a lot of money. But that's the life they chose.
Correct.
So the question is, what life do you want to choose? Where do you want to go with your life? And I says, I want it all. I don't want to be that person who's mad, didn't have a father around, that grew up with a single mother.
Use that as your superpower.
Right. I didn't want to be that kid. So when I was younger, of course I had ADD, ADHD. I think I had it all.
Don't most of us.
You name it, I had it all.
And I feel like successful people do have
But
that.
they didn't label you back then.
Right.
Correct.
I wasn't labeled as a kid.
Yeah.
Okay, so even though I was edgy, I was always didn't want to sit still.
Busy.
I was always busy. I didn't want to go to school. So when my grandfather said that to me about that. I said, maybe he's got a point. So I come home and I go, Mom, I'm quitting school. And she says,
Quitting school?
What do you mean you're quitting school? I said, Grandpa told me that I'm going to be broke if I listen to the teacher, basically.
Right.
And I need to work to help you, or to at least help the family, or figure out how to contribute, right? She says, well, that's not going to happen. You're not quitting school, right?
Right.
So I went to school, and then I realized at 8th grade, all the way up to your senior year, now they don't do this, but I was, 13 maybe, 12 or 13?
Mm-hmm.
They allowed you to get out of school at 10:30 to have a work experience in the work program.
Right.
So I'm like, well, this is great. I don't want to sit in school anyways. I'm probably never going to use most of this crap they're teaching me.
Totally.
So I'll go out and I'll get jobs. So I went home and I said, Mom, how about this compromise? She says, as long as you graduate high school, unlike your father and unlike myself, okay? Because my parents didn't graduate high school. My mother had 3 kids when she was 19.
So young, probably.
19
Wow.
years old. So I said, I'm going to graduate high school, but I'm going to go to work experience. So at 12 or 13, I had 3 jobs.
So what were your first job or two?
So I was always hustling as a kid.
And
so
were
it
they
started
first?
when I was probably 8 or 9. You're talking to a guy who was going to the golf course, selling
Golf balls.
lemonade and golf balls. I used to swim in the lakes at 9, 10 years old. I swim in the lakes, grab all the golf balls, put them in egg cartons, and then go to the golf course and sell them. Okay?
Unbelievable.
And then it got a little aggressive, because my parents were still married at the time. They didn't separate till I was like 10. So one day at the golf course, my dad's like, listen, why don't you go to the golf course and sell beer? I said, you could do that? So, of course, I didn't know. I was like 10 years old.
10.
So I got my golf balls, my lemonade,
And
a
beer.
cooler of beer. And next thing you know, the golf security came and said, you can't sell beer. And my dad made a joke out of it like it was funny, right?
Right.
But I did it, right? So as far as kind of my career and where is it going and how did it start, it all started as a child and trying to figure out how to outwork everybody. I wasn't the smartest tool in the shed. I graduated high school. I didn't go to college. But I knew my drive and my passion and my dedication, and, it was relentless. It was non-stoppable,
But did you want to be a boss? Did you want to just work to make money? Did you have any ambition of where you wanted to go?
Sales. I love selling. I used to sell waterless, greaseless cookware door to door at 16 years old. Okay,
Wow.
So as a kid, I always said, what can I do? Working 3 jobs. I started in washing dishes 5 days a week. I worked I'll never forget, it was here in Hollywood, the Vineyards Italian restaurant. Some people that have grew up in that Miramar, Hollywood area remember that. I washed dishes 5 days a week there. And then on the weekends, I washed dishes at the Epicurean restaurant, which was breakfast and lunch.
Yeah.
Some people remember the Epicurean.
Yes, I do.
And then I worked at Alouette Liquor Store Friday and Saturday night stocking the shelves. So, as a kid, I was hustling, right? From grabbing my lawnmower on my bike and pulling it behind me and knocking on doors to cut lawns. You name it, I hustled. Nobody out-hustled me.
Well, you knew how to take your energy and channel it into something.
And that's why I never really went to, I guess you could say, the dark side, right? And what I mean by that is when you grow up in a rough area, you grow up around people that are doing drugs and crime and everything else, you could wind up seeing yourself in a bad position.
I would think pretty quick.
But
you were too busy for
that's
any
what
of that.
kept me strong, because I occupied my time with work, because I loved to put the time and the effort into the work, and my work ethic was insane. But I love to have the money on me.
Right.
Okay? When you don't have any money on you, when you're going to school and the kids are making fun of you because you're wearing Bobos. Do you remember that? The gym shoes, the blue ones with the 3 stripes, they were called Bobos.
Yeah.
They basically, you'd get them from the blue light in Kmart, where they'd have the little blue light, thing in a bin with Bobo shoes. So they even made a song with it, and they used to sing it to me as a kid, so I didn't want to sing the song because I'm such a horrible singer, okay? But
so
kids
funny.
people that are listening to this that grew up in the 80s, they know what Bobos are,
Bobo.
So at what point was it where your career started to shape? Because you're a best-selling author. You're selling businesses. You've produced a movie, started a movie.
Yep.
You're diversified.
You've written a couple of books. You're
4 books.
educating and
Best-selling books.
teaching people.
Yeah.
I mean, you got a cooking show.
Yep.
I mean,
Yeah.
so at what point was it that kind of your life and your direction kind of started to...
I think
form.
when I got past that high school education and realized that I wanted
You were
more.
free a little bit too.
You know, I actually started in the health club business, okay?
Right.
And I moved back to Chicago and tried to basically have a relationship with my father, and that didn't work. He wound up, unfortunately, going to prison for a long time. And I was on my own now. Now I'm in Chicago, and I'm on my own.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm working in the health club business, selling gym memberships at 18 years old.
You know, I hear so many people, like, because I love podcasts, which is how I started this.
Yeah.
But I feel like so many sales entrepreneurs started selling gym memberships.
Crazy. In the 80s, it was huge. I mean, I would sell a membership for Chicago health clubs. At the time, we had 26 gyms in Chicago. And I would sign you up for 36 months on a contract, which was financed by another company. So you would finance a membership for 3 years at like $60 a month and get free tanning, unlimited racquetball. And we would sit there and we would basically have you sign these contracts for 3 years. Now, you know, $10, you know, a month, and you can cancel when you want. I don't even understand how they stay open, to be honest.
It's so true. Different model.
But the health club business molded me because I worked 12 hours, 13 hours, 14 hours a day. They put me in a rough gym to start. And then, you know, I started just beating everybody in sales. I just crushed everybody. I was a young kid. So one of the top managers, supervisors said, you know, I'm going to give you an opportunity to manage a gym. He goes, you're just amazing. I'm going to give you a gym, but it's in the worst area of Chicago. And I said, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Because you're going to go to Evergreen Park. I went, Evergreen Park? Evergreen Park in Chicago is close to the jail, and all of the gangs, every gang you can imagine in Chicago goes to that gym. So I'm like, so you're going to put me in a gym that's the worst gym in Chicago. And I said, you know what? I'll take the challenge. That was what molded me to what I am today. It was that challenge at an early age that they gave me, the worst possible gym you could imagine. And I wound up going there, and I turned that gym completely around. I got everybody on my side, and I wound up remodeling the whole gym.
Wow.
They loved me.
So did you have a partnership in this, or mainly
I was working for a company as a W-2 employee and as a sales rep, and I was given an opportunity, and it was a horrible, horrible opportunity. But it was an opportunity.
Yeah.
So if I can prove myself, what was going to happen next?
Yep.
So that's kind of where it led. I wound up at 19 buying my first house. Okay, at 19 years old.
In Chicago or here? In
right
Chicago?
over the border in Indiana. It's a little cheaper.
Okay.
I remember I bought a $72,000 house at 19 years old. You know, so then I bought a limo for shits and giggles and had fun with my friends. And then I bought a Ninja. And then I bought a speedboat, you know. So I wound up making money, and I wound up, you know, it was funny because I had a spending issue.
I was going to say, was that your drive too?
I just wanted stuff that I never thought I would have. So
those were your,
you know,
but that motivated you to work harder, correct?
The more I spent, the more I wanted to make.
Correct.
Right? So they used to call me Cali Spendo.
Yeah.
Like Caliendo, but Cali Spendo. That led into me actually becoming a supervisor, running gyms, 6 gyms. At 23, they sold Chicago health clubs out to Bally. Right?
Okay.
And then Bally bought them out, and then the guy who molded me, his name is Al Phillips, I'll never forget him. The guy that molded me, who abused me. You can't do this shit nowadays.
Right.
But this guy, he took a liking to me because of what I did that he didn't think I could do, and he mentally abused me, right? What I mean by that is we would have 25 managers of men and 25 managers of women. And then every night we'd have to get on a call and do our numbers, right? Well, I was in the worst gym in the city, right? And he would just abuse me over the phone, right? He'd just like, Caliendo, do me a favor. He was English, right? So I'm not good with his accent.
Right.
He would be like, you know, do me a favor, lock the doors, and shove the keys up your ass, right? You know, and go home and don't come back. And I was like, what? Over the phone. I'm like embarrassed, right? And then we show up for a monthly meeting, and he would annihilate me again. I mean,
Was there a reason?
He felt, and his mentality
What's
was
his strategy?
that if he could create that fire to make me mad
He
enough
was pushing
to want to
you.
produce,
So he was pushing you.
it was his way, but his way worked. Okay, could I do that now? People would cry now if I
Right,
said that.
yeah.
They would go in their home and say, "Oh my God, that
Yeah.
cannot happen." But that's the difference between.
Well, the
sometimes
world has
has changed.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to be nice. There was no nice.
No,
Either
and
produce or
it's
go home.
true.
That
Right.
was it. There
It's
was no
true.
discussion about it. So the pressure as an 18, 19-year-old kid was massive because I was the one that was.
But you
looked at.
handled it well.
I learned that I can accept it and I could turn it, right? I can turn
Overcome
it into,
it.
I can overcome it and turn it into something positive because I did not like to be embarrassed. To this day, my own children, which I have 8 children, to this day, my own children know the last thing they want to do is embarrass me in front of anybody. Okay,
That's like your-
I
that's
said, listen,
yours.
I've embarrassed my whole life as a kid.
Wow.
As you can tell, I'm, probably 6 inches from being a little person. I'm short, right? Some Italians are. So of course you get picked on as a kid, and then I got some crazy Englishmen abusing me mentally
yeah.
to try to get me to produce.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like a horror story, right?
Right,
It's crazy.
But you overcame it and you achieved what
And
you were.
that's the difference between, in my opinion, winners and losers.
Right.
Which is why
100%.
Which is why I wrote that book, The Sales Assassin. That first book that I wrote, The Sales Assassin.
Was he the assassin?
I was the sales assassin.
Okay.
What happened was, as a kid, one day I was like 21, and I was with a group of people, and they were kind of snobby. It was the north side of Chicago, wealthy people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, well, what do you do? And I said, well, I'm a gym manager.
manager.
They're like, a gym manager, so you're just a salesman, right? Is that what you are, a salesman? And I'm with some doctors, attorneys. I'm just a young kid. And I go, no. I'm not a salesman. I'm a sales assassin. There's a difference. And that's how the book was formed.
Right.
I called myself a sales assassin, skipping over something, at 19 I opened up my first martial arts school, which is
So
another
was that your
reason.
first entrepreneurial?
The sales, the first entrepreneur was my dojo, right?
Okay.
Which was called the Asian Fighting Arts Academy. Joe Gortia, which, I'll have to send this to him because he loves when I talk about him because he was an
But
amazing
how did you
influence.
jump to that? Were you involved in martial arts, or
I liked it when I was a kid. I did wrestling. I did judo. I did some kickboxing. So I always felt like, I wanted to really get involved in that. And then one day, this Green Beret, Joe Goitia from
Oh,
the gym,
wow.
comes
Very
up to me
cool.
and says, do you want to open a gym with me? Well, I had some money. I was a kid. And I said, hell yeah, let's open up a little gym. And we rented a little facility and started the gym and had great success with it.
And
So that
your
was my first real
into-
leap into starting my own business at 19 years old.
did you leave the health club?
Of course not. That was just a side
You were
little
used
hustle.
to having a lot of irons in the fire. Obviously, that started in high school when you were juggling three
It
jobs.
started as a kid. I mean,
Yeah.
I have to stay busy, right? It's kind of like, a shark in the ocean, right? Believe it or not, if a shark stops swimming, what happens to him? He drowns.
Oh.
Okay? Known fact. They have to keep swimming.
Yep.
They can't
Right.
just,
Yep.
most
Right.
sharks have to keep swimming.
Yep.
So, that's kind of how I felt, but, some of the things that were put into my brain by this Al Phillips guy who, tortured me, mentally. I mean, I'll never forget, this is a crazy story, but it's great for the listeners to hear because
Right.
this story is one day he's sitting on it's like 5 a.m, and he's sitting on his couch watching TV and drinking some coffee before a monthly meeting. And he's watching the channel where there's like animals, like Animal Planet or something like that.
yeah.
And he sees a leopard, right? And he tells this story to us at the actual event with all the managers. And he goes, I was watching TV this morning and I thought about all you managers. And I seen a leopard, and I saw this leopard who started crouching back in the woods, right? And he's looking at
Hunting.
this deer, right? And all of a sudden he sees this little deer and he comes hopping along, and all of a sudden the leopard comes out, grabs the deer, and starts eating the deer.
Yeah. Pounce.
So I thought about all of you people here as managers. You're not leopards. You're all prey.
You're
right?
all tears.
Right. And I looked at him and I went, and he said, especially you, Caliendo. And I said, oh shit! So not only am I prey, but he singled me out of 50 managers.
I'm not Bambi.
So he just, I think
He
he
knew.
liked me so much that he had to constantly pressure me and get me to a point where I would boil.
But it sounds like that every time he did,
It worked.
you exceeded.
Yeah.
It
and
worked.
He was a pivotal person in your growth.
He really was the person that basically challenged me. And if you're not challenged, I mean, you have to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not challenged by people who are above you, how are they going to make you great? How are you going to become great? How does somebody become great? It's just wake up and say, I'm going to be great? No, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
It's a series of things that go through your life that basically mold you to who you're going to be for the future. So what did I want to be? Well, I wanted to be a father, right? I wanted to have a better father because I didn't have one.
Be a better father.
I wanted to be a husband. I wanted to do everything that wasn't right for me.
Oh, it's amazing.
That was right for family, right? To give what I didn't have. Was I mad about it? Was I angry? Yeah. You know, even now, my kids and my wife will sometimes call me an angry elf, right? You know? So, funny story. I don't know if you've ever seen Elf, but that's funny.
Yeah,
stuff,
we
right?
have many
Yes.
times.
So yeah, was I called an angry elf sometimes? Yeah. Because I was always a little bit mad of not having what I wanted as a child.
Right.
And that was just a normal
I think
family.
that's normal too, in a way. We all want what we don't have.
We do.
And we have to channel that into pushing us
Yeah.
instead of a pity party.
You're right. And it's good you say that because for listeners that are listening,
Yeah.
you know, that's where you have to challenge yourself.
Without a
You know,
doubt.
if you want it bad enough, how are you going to go get it?
It's so true.
There are people that get lucky. I've seen a lot of lucky people
There
be at the right
is.
place at the right time,
There
and all of a
is.
sudden,
Correct.
There
it does
is.
happen.
It does.
It was never going to happen to me.
No, I
okay?
understand.
And it probably hasn't happened
But
to
it
you
doesn't
guys,
mean that
right?
you can't get to that same end goal. I mean, I felt like the sooner as soon as you realize that you really are in control of where you end up.
Yes, yes, and that's
That's-
also the issue because everybody wants to blame everybody else
Oh,
for their
yeah.
own problems, their own issues.
Yeah.
You know, they always want to put it on somebody else. You know, the only person that gets in the way of you is you.
Is you.
right?
I know.
And people don't accept
Well, it's
that.
not you. It's
Our
your head.
brain.
It's your head.
Yeah.
What you're
So
thinking.
going into the Sales Assassin and how that book started, you know, was about basically mindset, mind preparation. What made me me, and how can I write a book that's different than any sales book?
Right.
And the Sales Assassin was a book that was completely different. It was an out-of-the-box way of thinking of sales. It was about creating, you know, the mindset and the mind prep and the goals and everything they don't really teach you in Sales 101 books. Most
Right.
of them,
That
I
they
don't
don't
even have
teach
the
in
patience
school.
to read.
So how many years later does that book come out?
So that book came out in 2015.
Okay.
Okay.
So many years later.
Many years
You
later.
were already
Yep,
you.
You know,
Yeah.
and I was already
Successful.
the sales
Speaks to
assassin
this-
in many different fields.
Yes.
You know, and you know, it just came to a point where you know that book needed to get written. It needed to get written for my legacy. That I was
Definitely.
able to
Get
be
it out on
a
paper.
kid who didn't barely finish high school, but now write a book. But there was a lot of reasons. You know, we had Crystal Harvey, who was my business manager, who was an amazing writer, and she could take me and put me in a book. Where
Right.
I couldn't do that. I can't.
Right,
I'm not a
right.
writer. You know what I mean? I
Right.
So
can talk.
somewhere along the way, you learned to collaborate and delegate as well.
Yeah. Delegating, I've been good at delegating. I've never been such a micromanager guy because
me
if
too.
somebody could do the job, they need to figure stuff out just like I figured out stuff.
Right. Yeah.
Right? I can't be babysitting people.
True.
Here's your task. Go figure it out.
Yeah.
Right?
Correct.
You know, and that makes them a better person. You know,
correct.
because that's kind of what was said to me. Well, Anthony, you need to get your numbers up. Okay, well, how do I do it? Okay, well, if that was the case, your numbers would be up. I don't know exactly how you're
Right.
going to do it. You just need to figure out how to do it.
Right.
You know, and that's exactly what I did. I figured out how to do it. You know?
So you're running now a martial arts gym
Yeah.
In Chicago.
in
Chicago.
Chicago. What's next? What happens next?
So-
because that's your first entrepreneurial
So
business.
when Bally bought it out, you know, I had an opportunity where the main guy who abused me my whole time as a kid, Al Phillips, said to me, he goes, Anthony, I'm going to go partner with Schwarzenegger. We're going to build world gyms.
Arnold
way.
Schwarzenegger.
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
No
Yes.
way.
We're going to build world gyms. I go, get the hell out of here. You know, and he goes,
So this guy ended up going.
yes, I'm
Two.
selecting you out of everyone to manage the gym for us.
So he liked you.
So
even though he was rough with you.
He respected you.
That's it. He knew
He took
that if
he took a liking to
right,
you.
if anybody can overcome anything, who can get kicked
Figure
in
it
the
out.
face a million times and come back. I was like, you remember as a kid, Weeble Wobbles?
Yeah,
Yes.
That was me. You'd knock me down, I'd wobble back up. You knock me down, I'd wobble back up.
But that's a good lesson that anyone listening should think about.
They should.
Oh,
they
yes.
should. It's
always
about
worth-
never giving up. Just
Correct.
don't quit, right? Just don't quit.
100%.
No matter what happens, don't
Yep.
quit. You're this close.
You are.
So when that happened, I went to the
Well,
went to the
a lot
gym.
of that skill comes from being a good salesperson, because a good salesperson's getting that door slammed on them, and every time that door gets slammed,
Right.
it's an opportunity for another
What
door
makes
possibly
a great
to
salesman?
open.
I mean, think about it. Is it the gift of the gab? Maybe.
No, I think it's the consistency, the persistency.
Correct. Is it their ability to hang in there when things suck and aren't going their way, to be able to figure out how to make it happen, right? There's a lot of great salesmen, but they're never going to be great entrepreneurs.
True.
Okay, they're just good at sales.
Right.
True.
I was good at marketing and sales.
Okay.
So when I got the job for World Gyms, he said to me, "Look, Anthony, we're going to open up this gym on Montrose Avenue off Lakeshore Drive in Chicago. It's going to be amazing." I said, "Man, I can't wait." Arnold Schwarzenegger showed up to the opening.
Oh, wow.
I got to go to the Arnold Schwarzenegger Classic every year. I mean, here's a 23-year-old kid sitting in Ohio at the Arnold Schwarzenegger Classic with Lou Ferrigno,
Yeah.
Franco Colombo, Sergio Olivia, okay, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Lou Ferrigno.
More passion.
Here I'm at a table, right, sitting here, and I'm just a young kid, right? So now I got a lot of fire. Second gym we opened across from the Mercantile Exchange on the river in Chicago. I killed that. I ate that gym up. All the guys from the Merc with all these badges would come over, and they had all the money, and they would pay in full, pay in full, pay in full. We didn't have enough. They had so much cash, and we rocked that gym. After the second gym, I was supposed to get some kind of
like equity.
percentage. Right.
Okay.
Now I was 24 at the time, or 25. That didn't happen. So I refused to do the third gym because I wasn't going to be used. I said, "Al, I love you, but that's enough. Now it's my turn." Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you know how it goes. Some people are just tight with their wallet, and they don't want to give you what you should deserve. And here's another lesson. If you don't get what you deserve, move on.
Yeah.
Correct.
Move on.
Don't
because
stay that little.
I left a business that I loved, that I was the best at, but I realized it wasn't going to take me where I wanted to go.
Mm-hmm.
So where did you move on to?
It's funny you say that. I was across from the Merc. So what do you think happened? I get all these guys that have come in and say, "Listen, you should be a stockbroker." I said, "What's a stock? What do you mean? What's a stockbroker?"
Did you teach yourself that?
I don't know about being a stockbroker. What did I do? And they said, "Well, you got to get a license." I said, "Okay, you got to get a Series 7. Oh, shit. Okay.
Back to school.
This is the second hardest license to pass. First is the bar, probably
bar.
second is the Series 7.
Really?
Right.
So I said, this is going to be difficult, And here is...
Did you end up getting it?
I wound up getting
course.
it after the third time. And if I didn't pass it, I passed it right with a 70. If I didn't pass it the third time, I had to wait a year, I believe.
Oh,
okay?
right.
At that time, I didn't have a job. I had money in the bank. I was losing everything.
Were you married yet?
No.
Okay.
Car got repoed.
Oh,
I mean,
geez.
I mean, it was behind on mortgage payments. Had to give up everything. I
Oh,
wound
wow.
up sacrificing everything that I did just to prove a point.
That you could
and
pass
the point
that
was,
test.
I'm going to pass this damn thing. I'm not going to give up. And I'll never forget when I passed it, and I got my Series 7 license and then my 63.
Now what?
I went into the firm and I just started annihilating it. I mean, I just...
Cold
I took
calling
off.
and all
Just
that?
cold calling a guy and getting on the phone and basically introducing myself to him. And
Did you enjoy that?
Oh, man, it was probably one of the funnest things. It was so amazing to get people to send you money. You never really met them. You got to try to make them money, right? You can't
Right,
just
of course.
continue to lose their money. They're
Right,
going to leave
yeah.
you. So that's when I got into Wall Street. I made a lot of money. I was very successful, super successful. But, that...
In Chicago.
Yes, in Chicago. And then we moved down to Florida, and we moved the branch down here, which is how I came back here
Unbelievable.
another time.
Right.
So I wound up coming back here again.
But what made
and
you
the
come
firm
to move to Florida? At
The
that
firm
point?
decided they were going to relocate to Florida.
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
they shut their New York office
And
down
you're
and their
like,
Chicago
okay,
office.
like,
They're like,
I kinda
look, we're
know
all
that
going
area.
to Florida. we're going to go enjoy ourselves. And they picked the top 25 guys, and we came. Okay? It was a great learning experience, but I learned how to be a trader. I learned how to do options. I learned stuff that I couldn't have learned this in school.
Correct.
Okay?
No.
Yeah.
So to this day, I'm still a day trader. I still trade
You
my own
do?
account every day. And I have good days and bad days, and my
Right.
employees all know because they can tell that the market's not going well, you know.
Right.
But look, I've always been a risk taker, okay? And being a risk taker, I will give it all up to take risk if I believe in what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And if I lose, I'll shake it off, and I'll start over
Go again.
So I don't really care. The money is not what motivated me. And a lot of people might think that.
No,
I could
it's-
care less about money. I can't take it when I'm dead.
Yeah.
Okay? What am I going to do with it? Just give it to my kids? Give it to my family? Okay, maybe that's motivation. But I'm not giving them nothing. They're going to earn it.
But do you have a wife at that point?
No, I didn't get married till I was 30.
Okay.
So at 30 years old, I had a goal. And here it goes with goal, right? If you read The Sales Assassin, this was even goals that I set for my life, right?
Did
I
you write
constantly-
these goals down, or
they were
were
always
they
in my head.
just
I
in
always
your-
knew what I wanted to accomplish. I was methodical on figuring out, like a surgeon, what I wanted. And I said, when I turned 30, I had a child at 18, 19 years old. Unfortunately, I didn't marry her, but I raised a child. Okay, so I had a child young.
Okay.
And then at 30, I said, look, I want to get married, and I want to have a son. Right, I already had a daughter.
Right.
So I want to have a son and give my son what I didn't have.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
That was my goal. Well, now I have 5 sons and 3 daughters.
Unbelievable. What a blessing.
So you could see that it's about going, and you can't always reach your
Do
goals.
they work with you?
I had my daughter working with me. I had my sons working with me. The problem with them working with me, with my own children, is I am too aggressive, and I don't accept any laziness or any. You got
Slack.
to move as quick as I move, and not many people can do that.
Yeah, you're
so
there.
my kids are all successful. My daughter's in college, her 3rd year to be a nurse. My other daughter's going to be an attorney. My other 2 sons are master mechanics. They've been at Honda since they're 18. They run pretty much. My one son, Giovanni, is at Jets.com. He's one of the top Jets broker for a massive company at an early age.
Wow.
My other son sells health insurance.
So they all kind of have that
So
sales.
they all have that fire in them and that drive in them, and I don't give them anything. I mean,
It's amazing.
I had the ability to do a lot, but I choose not to because I will not allow them to think.
You don't want to
they can
rob
ask
them
me.
of that either.
No, because they have to learn how to stand on their own 2
Yeah,
feet. I watched my mother struggle to keep food on the table and a roof over her head and cry at night when I was a child. And I never wanted that, for my children. So I want to teach them how to be their own person and be able to take care of their own responsibility. My children don't call me for money. They know they would rather, get it from a friend than have to call me, okay? Because I'm going to give them the riot act and say, what are you doing wrong? What's the problem?
can't
What's the
imagine.
issue? Because I'll dig it out of them. Remember, what I
Yeah.
do for a living now is, I load my gun with ammunition. So in my book, The Sales Assassin, the first book I wrote, we say silent and listen are spelled with the same letters.
Right.
So you have to learn how to be silent, which
Silent.
is tough for me because I'm nicknamed the mouth of the South.
Right.
Right? And then you have to listen.
Yep.
So that's one thing that I try to stick to.
So you're a stockbroker. You're selling stocks.
Yes.
But I'm guessing from what I'm hearing from you, at some point you woke up wanting to change that.
I did want to change that because I became
So what did you-
I became an option trader, and really what happens when you become an option trader and a trader, you become kind of a junkie to a certain point. You
want
It's
more.
no different than doing drugs or alcohol. When you're addicted to something, it becomes an issue.
Yeah, it's a problem.
So, I was addicted to the gamble. I
Wow.
was addicted to the
It
high.
is legalized
But
gambling,
as
essentially.
you're raising a family and kids and a wife, the question is, do you want to lose them or do you want to move on? My choice was to move on, and I still trade for myself today.
Right.
But having that weight on my shoulder that was so emotional and so bad to raise a family, it just wasn't worth it for me.
Wasn't conducive.
No, it wasn't. You know.
So did you make like a exit strategy from that to like be able to fill your cart with something else?
I did.
Or?
You know, I made money. I tried different things. I started, you know, a company. I started a couple companies. I had a lead generation company.
Okay.
You know, that lead generation company, you know, was very successful. You know, at the time it was called Lending Hope. It was like Lending Tree. And then it was all subprime. And we had probably 60, 70 people on the phone generating leads.
Wow.
And we'd sell those leads. There's so many things that I've done, little things here and there, but that kind of propelled me into the lead generation business, which I thought was a fun business.
So when you say lead, like emails or
at the time, this is a little bit before emails. I mean, opt-in emails kind of came along, and I got into that too. It's a whole nother story.
Wow.
But the marketing, and then I became a mortgage broker. So after getting all these leads and selling leads to New Century and Aegis and Countrywide, they would buy $50,000, $100,000 worth of leads off me. I mean, it was a big business. It still is the lead generation business.
Yeah.
So then we're getting to the main man now.
Okay.
So
the main story.
As basically the mortgage business was propelling and I was growing, and I started in that business with an idea that I'm going to generate some of my own leads to actually generate my own mortgages.
Building your own brand,
Building my own brand and building my own mortgage company. So then I would have a lead generation company, which would now feed the mortgage company.
And they go
it was a no-brainer. It was a no-brainer. So I started that, and then one day a guy comes to me out of the blue. Some guy, I really didn't even know him. He goes, Anthony, hey, I heard you're in the mortgage business. I want to be an investor. I said, you want to be an investor? Okay, well, I was on Wall Street. I'm like, what do you got? He goes, I'm going to give you some money. I go, you're going to give me some money? This is getting better. What do you want me to do? You know, I'm not going to kill anybody. You know, I'm Italian, but I'm not going to do that. He goes, no, listen, I want you to go on the radio, and I'll pay for advertising. And I said, okay, let me try.
Go on the radio to promote your mortgage.
Promote the mortgage company. So one day, I'm on I think 560 QAM, okay, and Howard David at the time is one of the guys, and he does the ad for the mortgage company that I have right now, and says, you got to call the main man. You got to call my main man, the main man, Anthony Caliendo.
I got it.
And it stuck, okay. And I said,
you liked what you heard.
That's awesome,
I'm the main
actually.
man. So
I love that.
I became the main man on accident. And then we bought 1-800-THE-MAIN-MAN, themainman.com. And then I started running the ads, okay? And everybody knows who's in Florida for the last 25 years knows my voice. Hey, South Florida, it's the main man, Anthony Caliendo. There's almost no deal I can't close. So everybody knows my voice. It's powerful on radio.
Yeah, you do have a good
All
radio
the endorsers
voice,
know me. You know, I mean, everybody endorses me, from Joe Rose to Paul Castronova. I mean, I've had Hank Goldberg, Neil Rogers. I mean, you name it, I've had people endorsing me. Recently, I just had Hannity endorsing me on 610, who actually did my commercials, you know, which was great, because it's great to hear, like, you know, Hannity calling me the main man. He's telling people, call my main man, the main man, Anthony Caliendo. Yeah. So whether you're on the left or the right, I don't really care. But bottom line is, it is kind of cool, right?
That
you know,
is
no
very
matter
cool.
who it is. So that main man was created, you know, on accident, but it stuck. And then as that mortgage company grew, and as I started to propel, and I became the top branch in the country for this branch, okay? I think at the time it was Acceptance Capital Mortgage, and we became the #1 branch in the country. And the mortgage meltdown happened.
Right.
So 2008, I think I had 160 employees, 5 offices. Yep. So the main man was spending $100,000 to $150,000 a month in advertising.
Unbelievable.
Okay. Official mortgage company of the Heat, the Dolphins.
Oh,
you know,
that's
I mean,
so...
you go into the arena and you'd see the main man all around the arena.
Florida.
Right. So the advertising, you know, and the main man blew up, right? But then everything blew up, right? You know, the whole market blew up. The mortgage meltdown blew up, you know? And I sat there and went, okay, I'm in trouble, okay? I got all these leases, you know, obviously you know what's going to happen. You start getting, I mean, they were closing banks. I would move the deals to one bank, and they would shut down. I move it to another bank. I had one guy move to 4 banks. I felt so bad for him. I go, look, you're bad luck to a good hunting dog. I'm sorry, but I don't know what to tell you, man, because every bank closed. I mean, from New Century to World Savings to, Countrywide, they were just down. It was a domino effect.
Yeah.
So at that time, I was at a position where, what do you do now, man? I got to reinvent myself. I got to reinvent myself. I have to start over again. And when you make money and you lose it all, and now you're at a position where you have to give it all back to start something else, and then obviously there's lawsuits, there's leases, you're negotiating.
And
it's a
employees,
nightmare.
are you having to let people go?
I have to it was horrible, right? It's just a horrible feeling to see you
you're
get
dealing with a lot of negative
energy.
It's a lot of negative energy. But I had Al Phillips. I could handle anything, right?
You're right.
When I was a kid.
Yep.
I had that guy
Yep.
beating me up.
Yep.
So I wasn't about to beat myself up, right?
Good for you.
So anyways, I got through that process. And I remember as a kid, my dad, he was in the food business, right? In the olive oil business and in the Italian cheese business. Go figure, an Italian in the olive oil
And that's a
and
full
the cheese
circle
business,
movement, too. Yeah.
So I said to him, because at this time I actually started talking to him again, and we were just having a discussion. I said, you know what? I'm going to get into the food business. I'm going to become a food broker, stockbroker, mortgage broker, option broker.
I got food now.
What the hell, man? You eat it, okay?
That's a totally different business.
Totally different game. So I
Yes.
said, I'm going to get into food business, right? So at the time, there was a plant in New Jersey that he actually did all the sales for in Chicago. They've been partners. They knew each other for many years when the company started in 1983. And I went and I met with the people. And I said, look, I'm going to come in. I'm crazy. I'm a maniac. I'm going to come in. You guys have been around for, 25 years, 20-something years. I go, I'm going to come in. You guys never did a food show. You don't do any marketing. You don't have a website.
Right.
You're just a manufacturer who manufactures cheese. I said, I'm going to come in and I'm going to rock and roll this place. So what do? I get the phone number, okay, 1-800-BIG-CHEESE. This is an Italian cheese manufacturer.
But a cheese business, I mean, a perishable item that...
Yeah. Well, yes and no, because we dry cheese. So
but
it becomes shelf stable, but it is perishable. Knew nothing about the food business, knew nothing about the cheese business. I
But
buy
you know how to sell.
1-800-BIG-CHEESE.
You must have enjoyed cheese, though, eating it.
I enjoy food because my father was a chef, and we love to cook and we love to eat,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
We grew up in a very Italian family where food was the happiness
Abundance,
of the family,
yeah.
right? So I said, okay, well, let me start over. So I start over, I buy the phone number 1-800-BIG-CHEESE, and then I make a bobblehead of myself. I made one with the main man. I make a bobblehead of me standing on a wheel of cheese like Captain Morgan that says Anthony Caliendo, the Big Cheese, 1-800-BIG-CHEESE. I make 500 bobbleheads in China. They ship them to me, and I send them out to all the top executives in the country in the food business.
Well, what kind of executives? Like grocery store?
So we're talking about grocery stores, manufacturers, you name it, right? So I send out these bobbleheads, and all of a sudden, I'm on the phone calling companies, qualifying, and I realize the food business never had a guy like me in it. Never.
There's a lot of industries that you don't realize that are like that.
Yes.
I mean, my industry's like that too. It's ready for a little shake-up.
It's ready. It needed a guy like me to come in to shake it up, and I shook it up, man. I mean, I did food show after food show after food show, not only in the country, out of the country, in Dubai,
Really?
in China, in Germany. I mean, I traveled all over, and I did food shows all over the United States, and the booth would come up. I made a 10x10 booth. They paid for it. I went to the shows, and I became the Big Cheese. And
selling cheese.
And in 5 years, I took the company from probably $18 million to over $40 million, $50 million. So I built a massive residual business. So what was wrong with what I was doing? Nothing. It was the marks. I realized that if you're going to get ahead, you have to build something, in my opinion, residual.
Mm-hmm, yeah,
Residual
they say you want to
is
make money
amazing.
when you sleep.
So correct, and that was my dream. That
Yeah.
I was, and this time we had fax machines. So I said, "Look, I'm gonna sell so much cheese that I'm gonna wake up and people are gonna fax
You have
orders,
all
and
these
I'm gonna
orders
come in
that-
and they're gonna come in and boy did they. First year I did 3 million. Second year I did 6 million. Third year I did 9 million. Okay, so I broke the barrier of actually taking something I knew nothing about, created a brand, the Big Cheese, marketed myself, and basically had to go out there and get the accounts. But the food business didn't have somebody like me. I mean, I'm relentless on the phone. taking mine, I was relentless in the health club business, relentless in the brokerage.
Yep.
I'm a relentless guy. I will not give up on you. If you give me an inch, I'm going to wear you down until you give me an order. Just the way it is. In a professional way that I'm not annoying, but I'm persistent.
So were you going to an office at this time?
I had my own office.
Okay.
I had a little tiny office that was on Linton over here and Dixie in that little building that was maybe smaller than this tiny office here. Okay, and that's kind of how we started.
So are you an organized individual in terms of your, your calendar?
I'm completely a mess. I am the most unorganized person you're ever
Because from what
meet.
you're talking about and the amount of sales that you're doing and being relentless and continually calling and calling
Yes.
to get the sale,
That I'm
you got to
good
be
at.
somewhat
That
organized
I'm
or.
good at figuring out the persistency, but it's all paper. We print the paper, we put it in front of me, I make my little notes, I keep calling until
Right.
I decide I'm going to throw it in the garbage. But the thing about the food business was interesting. Nobody told me no. Nobody ever told me no.
Wow.
So
That's
there
a new
was
one.
no resistance. Now you take a great
And
salesman.
you do well off of resistance,
I
actually. You're
enjoyed
like,
resistance.
This is
I didn't
too
have any.
easy.
I was actually pissed. I'm like, can somebody just tell me,
Yeah, shut the
Anthony,
door.
go screw yourself.
Yeah.
Don't call me ever again. Not once. Because they never knew when they needed me. Okay? So I was persistent.
But you also must have been selling a good product as well.
We were selling a product that obviously people needed. Okay? It was a niche product that not everybody does. We perfected the art of custom blending cheese. Okay? We would custom blend the cheese based on price and quality. So if somebody
So
wanted
like
a cheap
cheddar
one,
and horseradish?
only Italian hard cheese.
Okay,
Parm,
gotcha.
Romano, just Italian hard
Okay.
cheese. Why Italian hard cheese? Because it doesn't mold as quick.
Gotcha.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, so
You
it's a
can-
longer
you can
shelf
cut it
life.
off.
We could dry it down. So
Yeah.
and then there's different types, right? When when they're getting served Parmesan in the prison, you think that's all real Parmesan? No, it's too expensive. There's additives, there's alternatives, there's
Right.
imitation. So
Oh, I
we
know.
became very good and the best, and to this day we still are the best at custom blending those products for price and quality.
Wow.
Now, I still sell tens of millions of dollars a year in that cheese business, okay? I built a residual business, which allowed me now to do what? To bring the main man back,
I
who was
love
sitting
that.
on the shelf, okay? Just waiting.
Just
For the
waiting for
ultimate time to
resurgence.
come back out, right?
Yep.
When is he going to come out? So at the time, I had somebody that I always kind of looked up to, and I watched him, and that was Andy Cagnetti from Transworld, who was a business broker. He owned an unbelievable company with a lot of branches, and I said, I've done it all. I could imagine how incredible I would be at this. I didn't realize how hard this business was when I got into it, okay? Mm-hmm. And we'll talk a little about that if you don't mind. It is the hardest business and sales
Food.
that anybody
Okay.
the business brokerage.
Gotcha. Okay.
Selling businesses.
Selling businesses
Like a
is
franchising, or
Nope.
is that something different?
Nope.
Okay.
We're talking about, let's say you're a design company and
Yeah,
you say to me,
a
Anthony,
brand.
I want
I'm
I want
ready.
you to sell my business.
So
Okay?
a person who owns a pizza place, a
Right,
laundry
I
mat.
understand. Okay.
It
You
could
know,
be
it could
any
be anything.
business.
A bookstore.
There's
it could
so
be
many businesses out
like
there.
a dentist's office.
I mean, I've never realized how many businesses are out there.
Right.
Because I've seen them all, sold them all, and done it all. Okay? I mean, I had a guy call me from the radio and says, "You'll never sell my business, main man." And I said, "Well, that's a challenge. Let's get started. What do you got?" He says, "I service microscopes." And I said, "You do what?" He goes,
like vacuums.
"I service microscopes." I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "I go to universities and hospitals and I service their microscopes."
Unbelievable.
I says, "That's a job? That's amazing." It turns out the guy's netting like $300,000 a year servicing microscopes. I said, "Oh my God, what am I doing?"
Yeah.
This guy's making a ton of money.
Yeah.
So what's your first business? You decide you're going to start selling businesses. What's the first business that you sold? What did they do? What was their-
I have to remember I sold so many now that I've sold businesses that I have to say nobody else would ever have sold.
And do you have any personal attachment to them? Or
Yes, I do. I
okay.
still, some of these people I sell business with, I still go fishing with. I still talk to.
yeah.
I built relationships because think about what I do right now. I take a person who might have owned a company for 30 or 40 years or 20 or whatever the amount
And
is.
they're passionate.
And they love their baby, right?
Yep.
They might not be the best person to run their own company. And I'll tell them that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because people sometimes keep their company where they want to keep it, where they're comfortable keeping it.
Correct.
Right? So if they're doing $1 million a year and they're comfortable doing $1 million a year, even though they might be able to do 5 million or 10 million, they don't want to, or they don't know how to. In most cases, they don't know how to scale it.
Yeah.
They don't know how to leverage.
Which is
they
a
don't know
whole
how
other part of
They don't know
business
how to
growth.
do integration through acquisitions. They don't know how to do vertical
Yeah.
integration. They don't, and I didn't know how to do all this stuff neither.
Yeah.
You know, so I realistically didn't even know how to read a damn tax return. You know, when I, you know, so I have no accounting experience.
Right.
So this business was the most challenging business I've ever done in my life.
And vast.
But where did you wake up going, today I'm going to start a business of selling businesses?
So what happened was at one time, a long time ago, I helped a friend, you know, who was selling an optical center. And I said, listen, I got a lead company, right? And I'll generate some leads, and we'll try to find a buyer who buys your optical center.
Right.
And he tried to sell it for 2 years.
Unbelievable.
Right? And I said, I don't want anything. Okay, I'm just going to help you, right?
Right.
He became a friend of mine, you know, and I said, let me just try it. And I bought data, and I created this fax campaign, and I sent it out to all the opticians in the country.
Accident almost. Wow.
And I got a call, and I sold his company, you know, and I got a buyer. They took care of it. He got an attorney. They got an attorney, and they did the transaction. So I didn't generate any commission off of it. I just did it to see if I could do it, right? And at that time, I said, man, and it didn't hit me at the time. What hit me at the time was when the cheese business, I got to a point where I got to where I think I was going to plateau. And I was starting to lose a little bit of passion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
And I said, okay, let me do something else. And then I looked at Andy Cagnetta's company, which has great company. And I said, you know, I think I could sell businesses. What did I have to do? I had to get a license. Here we go again. Okay.
Back to the
You need a license to
35 states, you don't need a license to sell businesses.
But in
of
Florida,
course,
you
in
do.
Florida, you do. You could go to New York and sell a business and don't need a license.
Well,
you can go to
it's-
New Jersey and sell a business and not use a license. But in
Right.
Florida, you
Well,
have to have a license.
Well, to cut hair in America,
Right.
you have to have a license.
so I said, oh, God, I got to do a test again. I'm too old for this shit. I don't know if I can do it, man.
Is there
You know?
actually a school to sell businesses?
No.
So what's the
There's no questions on the damn real estate test about selling a business, right? I don't think I had one question about selling a business.
So how do you get? Is
It's
this a
just a
form you got to fill
government
out?
thing. State
you
thing,
gotta
I
you gotta
guess.
take the state test to become a realtor to sell businesses, but you don't learn how to sell businesses. Nobody can.
Wait, you need a real estate license.
You need a real estate license. You need to be a sales associate.
Oh my
Right?
God, that's crazy.
You know, so that's
Dude,
kind of
yeah.
how it started, right? So I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna get a license. I got a license. Started a company. We got a broker because you got to be qualified. You have to have a broker. And that's kind of how the main man came back again, you know. And it started, you know, again as you know, I'm going to bring the main man back. Here I am back on the radio again, back advertising again, reinvesting.
But you had those skills.
I did,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I
You
had
had
the,
those-
and I
And the
had the brand.
connections,
I had the
too.
brand.
But you had those skills. But
Yeah.
now you're selling businesses. Now I've started a lot of businesses in a lot of different industries.
Yes.
And there's a learning curve for
Right.
each one of those.
Yeah.
But every day you've got a new business that's probably calling you or you're reaching out to.
Yeah.
So you have to be going through a learning curve almost every day or every time
Every
a new
s-
client comes
every
in.
single day, I say right now, by selling an enormous amount of businesses already, I can actually say I know a little about a lot.
That's awesome.
Okay, because I know how businesses tick. I don't just look at their financials. You got to understand, I'm the guy that digs. Okay, which is why I wrote that book, How to Flip Your Biz and Cash Out Big. It took me about.
That's your second book.
No, that's my fourth book.
Fourth book,
Yes,
okay.
my second book was written with Brian Tracy called
Right.
Cracking the Code to Success. Okay, that book was written with Brian Tracy, and The Sales Assassin, my first book, Brian Tracy endorsed it.
Oh,
That's a great name to have.
Endorsing your first book.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you want to ask me how that happened, boy, this is another story. I could keep going, but
I
I know,
know,
we're
I
not gonna,
love
we don't
it.
have
I
a lot
love
of
it,
time.
though, but there's so much information.
But that story was, as a kid, I was 16. I was selling waterless, greaseless cookware door to door with a display case, right?
Waterless, greaseless
Yes,
cookware.
it's crazy, right? Nuts, right? And China, right? So I'm knocking on doors, I'm selling, and there was a Brian Tracy event. Well, I had to pay like $250.
Yep.
Well, I saved up $250.
and you were like, I'm going.
And I went to a Brian Tracy's, my first sales seminar. Right?
Wow.
So,
I had a business,
Yeah.
in the television production
Yeah.
business, but I had 24, 25, 26 salespeople in
Right.
that production company.
Yeah.
Every year when Brian Tracy and Zig Ziglar would come,
yeah, one of my favorites.
Yeah.
I would
Zig
take
Ziglar.
everyone
to go see them.
For the whole day.
It's great.
Yeah,
So
sometimes it was 2 days.
It was like the beginning.
Like in an arena.
yeah, and that's what happened to me because I basically, when I went to that Brian Tracy thing, I realized I'm going to be a salesman for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
This is what I want to do. So I sent a letter to Brian Tracy telling him the story that I was 16 years old, okay? I sent him a nice letter. We got his information in Canada. We sent him a copy of the book. And believe it or not, he
read it.
He read the book. He sends a letter back and he goes, unbelievable book.
That's
I will
amazing.
endorse your book on the cover.
That's
Okay?
amazing.
So that was kind of like an unbelievable win, right? Because now I got a book coming out with Brian Tracy endorsing it. Huge as a kid who didn't have the college education or the skills.
Right.
So, after
But you
that,
really did have the skills.
I had the skills, but I didn't really have what a lot of people have, and I always wanted, right? I would love to went to
the
college.
organization,
I would have learned
guess, is what you're...
I could have cut some of my time down by understanding a lot of things because school does help.
I went to college for 4 years and got a degree,
Yeah.
but I learned more
Right.
in the
So did I,
extracurricular
working.
things that
I did
clubs
working.
that I joined and other things that I would
That's
do.
where you learn. Yeah.
That's where I learned.
On the job experience and learning is
Correct.
what you need. And you have to learn from your mistakes, right?
Totally.
Your losses, right? It's your losses that make you strong,
Yep.
right? It's when you lose,
It's so totally true.
that makes you strong. So, so after that book, his agent called me. Well, after the Sales Assassin, agent called me and said, "Look, we're going to write a book with Brian Tracy, Cracking the Code to Success. You in?" I said, "I am in." So wrote a book with him. After that, got a call from another agent with Jack Canfield, who wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul.
Oh, I love that
we
one.
wrote a book called The Recipe for Success with Jack Canfield. So now here I am.
Now you're an author.
Now I'm on the cover with Jack Canfield and Brian Tracy.
So would you promote these books?
Yes.
Would you be like, you'd be going on the radio, you would be...
You know what? Those books are really used as, I guess you could say, a business
Tools.
card,
Yeah,
right?
okay.
It shows my ability to be around very successful people that believe in some of my ideas and my concepts of what I say and what I've written, right?
Gotcha.
So it's great. You can't get rich off books. You know, I mean, you don't get. There's not a big payday, and people think they can. God bless, because it's so hard. Okay, I hope you can, right?
Yeah.
well, there's one or two every year, but they become,
Yeah, but it's
J.K.
not like
Rowling or
it's not
whatever.
like the
Not-
old
yeah.
days. They're not. They're not giving you checks now.
No, you're right.
you know?
They are like business.
Well,
But
it's
they're
the
like,
same like the music business.
Yeah.
It's not like that.
It's not like that
anymore.
anymore. Yeah, So I mean, if you get lucky, you get lucky. I really never cared how many books I was going to sell. I cared about my ability to be able to constantly challenge myself to go up to that next level, okay, and to put myself in a position of strength by basically showing that I have the support of very successful people.
Definitely.
It just makes me look much more
Yeah.
attractive,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So after about 3 years of doing the business brokerage and bringing the man back, and people will call me up and go, "Oh, I've been listening to you for 25 years. You've been selling businesses for 25 years." I go, "Well, I've been marketing for 25 years. I did mortgages and businesses, but I had great success, and I was able to figure out what was the problem with selling businesses? What was the issue? And to this day, it never ends. There's continuously roadblocks and obstacles that you have to be able to see 10 miles down the road before that deal
Ahead.
gets blown up.
Wow.
And for some people that think that you don't need a business broker to sell a business, jump in a lake.
I would think you do.
You
You need that independent.
But can you also help
person.
people, like you were talking about, people have the skills where they got a nice successful business, but they can't take it to the next level.
Scaling,
Can
you
you help a person find that person to bring them in maybe as a partner and sell part of the business?
That's not something that I would focus on. I'll tell you
Okay.
why. First of all, obviously, I can't control what people do and their decisions, right?
Right.
So if I'm not mentally and financially involved in the business, it doesn't make sense for me, right? Because I can't control what's going on. If you can't control what's going on, you're normally going to not have control.
Correct.
And not having control means it's a disaster.
Right.
Okay? I'll give you an
Yep.
example. If I don't manage the buyer, the seller, the banks, the accountants,
The lawyers,
attorneys.
yeah.
If I don't manage the whole process of the whole deal from start to finish, keep people moving, stop the
Keep the
garbage.
egos out,
I
family
become
and-
a psychiatrist.
Yeah, I was
I got
gonna say.
emotional issues. I got timing issues kills deals. I got attorneys that want to kill every deal. No
Yes,
offense to your attorneys
it's
listening,
so
but
true.
you guys are crazy sometimes.
Yes.
Okay? At the end of the day, the seller wants to sell a business and the buyer wants to buy a business. The problem is there's too many emotions and too many people involved to screw up a deal. So a lot of times a deal will die 3 or 4 times before it even closes. By mistake. Okay, I can't tell you the things that have come up in the end that are disasters for a deal. And I've overcome so many of them. It's so impressive for me to actually say this right now because I put myself up against attorneys who have been closing business for 20, 30 years, and they couldn't figure it out. How does a
Right.
kid like me figure it out who doesn't have a college education? Because I am the master at figuring out what is the problem and how do I solve it. I don't rely on them to solve it. I don't rely on the buyer to solve it, the seller to solve it, the attorney to solve it, the account. I figure out how to solve the issue.
I'm a problem solver. I'm solution oriented in my
Right.
whole vibe
Yeah,
of
in
how
life.
I'm like, just give me solutions. I don't want to hear any more
Right.
problems.
So are you
Obviously, they
selling
come
businesses just in Florida, or are they all over?
Well, I
the
can't
country?
sell all over, but my focus obviously has been in Florida,
Okay.
because I'm here. I can go meet people. I can go to their business. I find
So
myself.
is that an important aspect of selling?
It
a
is.
business,
We're
being
launching
able to-
now throughout the state of Florida right now. We're selling businesses out throughout the state right now. We started kind of going out of the comfort zone of just South Florida. I wanted to be in a position that until I'm really, really comfortable with everything I'm doing, that I'm not going to really expand the way I want to expand. The problem is I can't hire another Anthony Caliendo.
yeah.
It's impossible. There'll never be another Anthony Caliendo. Never.
Yep.
Okay,
Well, you made yourself unforgettable.
correct. And a lot of people can't do what I do. So for me to just hire a bunch of people and try to train them, it'll never be the same.
How many can you work on selling at a given time?
I mean, on average, I'll have anywhere from 10 to 15 deals on average. Okay,
and
a
what's
fair
the
amount.
length
Yeah.
of time an
but I
average
might have
deal
30.
take?
I might have 30, 35 listed, right? So
Like-
I have more listings. But the problem is, even though you have more listings, you have listings that obviously are going to go quicker based upon the listing.
Mm-hmm.
The bigger the deal, the quicker it usually goes in most cases, unless it's a mess and I have to clean it up, which happens a lot of times.
Right, you have to do the do.
At the end of the day, what people sometimes don't do, and business owners don't do, and this is the biggest problem, which is why I wrote that book, How to Flip Your Biz and Cash Out Big. I took all the problems and all the issues and all the reasons why businesses don't sell. Believe it or not, 8 out of 10 businesses won't sell. Can you imagine?
What are the top 2 reasons of why?
I'm going to give you. But can you imagine if 8 out of 10 homes didn't sell?
No.
Or 8 out of 10 real estate?
No, yeah,
but
you don't even
Can
think
you imagine
that.
8 out of 10 won't sell? So why is that?
Yeah.
Why does somebody work 30 years and never even think about how to exit their company?
Yeah, that's
Right.
pretty.
Okay? And that's a
Profound.
majority of business owners. Not only that, accountants and sometimes even their own owners, they don't show what they should show through the profits of the company sometimes the right way. Sometimes, and it's not illegal. Sometimes they're taking more distribution. Sometimes they're paying off expenses through a company. All small businesses do it. There's nothing wrong with it. Okay? But when it comes time to sell a company, do you have everything it takes for a buyer to want to buy it?
Right.
Is that company running only because of you? And I've sold companies that only
That are
run because of
the owner.
the
Well,
owner.
that's
Yeah.
got to be tough.
It's a very tough one. But,
Yeah.
I always say there's an ass for every seat. You just got to find the
Yeah,
right ass,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
So in a nutshell, it's understanding the business and them understanding what they're doing wrong. I don't sugarcoat anything. I am the most brutal, right to the point, in your face type of guy. And if you don't like me, don't deal with me. But if you don't like what I say,
you learned that from back in your days
Right.
at the health club with that
if
guy.
you don't like what I say, then don't talk with me. Because
Right.
I'm going to tell you what you don't want to hear, like it or not.
Right.
And then I'm going to tell you how to fix it.
Right.
And then I'm going to tell you how I can solve it. And if you're not going to follow every direction that
Then
I
I
take
don't
and you're not
want
going to listen to me, then you don't need me.
Yeah.
And I use this analogy sometimes. If your neighbor, right, one day your neighbor's, God forbid, I hate to say this, but somebody got shot at your neighbor's house. And they say that you did it. You're the neighbor that you came and you shot him and you killed him. And you know you didn't shoot him, right? You didn't do it, right? But you get
right.
arrested, and now you got to prove yourself, right? Do you think that happens in the real world?
Yeah.
You better believe it does happen.
Probably more
So
often
what do
we
you
wanna-
do? You go hire the cheapest attorney? You know? No. You're getting
Your
ready to go
life's
to
on the
prison for
line.
the rest of your life. Your life is on the line.
Yeah.
Well, that's how I feel with business owners. Their life is on the line. They need me more than I need them.
True.
And that's a fact because I know what I need to do to get them to the finish line and how I need to get them to the finish line. And you're not going to go pay the cheapest attorney. So I tell people, don't even discuss my commissions yet until I understand the deal and what I think it's going to take to sell it. And even if I think I could sell it, I will pay for myself because I will get more money than any other broker because of my ability to obviously figure out how to get your financials to look better and increase your profitability and show you how to do things differently. And I pay for myself. So clients don't usually argue with me on my commissions.
Right.
Do I charge more than every other broker?
Yeah.
In most occasions, I do. Yep. So why
You've
does an
earned
attorney
that.
charge $900 an hour and another one charges $300 an hour?
Yeah.
It's their experience. It's their ability to get the job done and have their reputation that allows them to make more money, right?
Yeah.
Why do people get more money? Well, what did they do? Well, this is what I did my whole life. Everything I've done my whole life has got me to the point to do what I do right now. And I
Wow.
am the absolute best at it.
Such an interesting facet of business.
So
and
what are the two
entrepreneurship.
biggest situations
Well,
you run across in trying to sell
First
a
is
business?
financials. Okay?
Yeah.
First is financials. They want to make the money, but they don't want to show the money. Okay?
Yeah. Right.
If I said to you right now, if you had to pay $20,000 in taxes right now, what would you say to me? I don't want to pay $20,000 in taxes. That's the first thing you'd say to me.
Correct.
I need you to write a check for $20,000. Anthony, I'm not doing it. No, you are doing it. Here's why. If you write that check for 20 grand, I'm going to get you another 200. You're going to net 180 for writing a check to 20. You want to cut the check for 20 now? If you answer no, then have a nice day because
Yeah.
you're not as smart as I thought. Right? So obviously adjusting the way you're doing your financials, the way you're making money, the way you're taking money, the things that you're doing, obviously we have to get it sellable because buyers and banks look at one thing. They look at bottom line. They look
Right.
at what I call, and this is why I wrote this book, because I don't call it EBITDA, right? We all know what EBITDA
Scott
is,
likes
right?
that
Everybody,
word,
even
yeah.
people that aren't that talented heard the word
Yeah,
EBITDA.
yeah.
Most people will never know what EBITDA is.
Right.
Even business owners that I talk to don't understand EBITDA. Okay? They have no clue how to read their tax returns or understand EBITDA. No clue. Let's just say probably 9 out of 10. How do you like that number? Is that crazy?
Crazy.
Okay, so what do? I create what I call net owner benefit. I call it NOB. The net owner benefit is what the person is truly making from their company.
Right.
I'll give you an example. If you're paying a car through your company and the buyer's not getting the car, that's an add back, right? You know, if you're paying your health insurance or you're paying, you're paying a bunch of
gas
stuff.
for your car.
You're paying a bunch of stuff through the company,
Yeah.
right? So I have to figure out what that true net owner benefit is to that company. And then I do my valuations, and then I do that for free, by the way. I value the company. And if I think I can sell it, I list it. But I will not list a company because somebody tells me, I had a guy the other day tells me, well, this is what I want to sell for. I said, hold on a minute. Don't tell me what you want to sell for. I'm going to tell you what you're going to sell for when I get all this information.
Right.
And if you don't want to send me all that information, I can't help you.
Yeah.
Okay?
So true.
Because they just don't understand. Everybody thinks they got the prettiest baby.
Of
Okay?
course.
Oh, my baby's the most gorgeous baby in the world. No, your baby's ugly right now. Okay? It's not an attractive baby. And I'm the guy to say it, right?
Yeah.
So I got to make the baby prettier, right?
It's funny because all these different things you're saying are things that I
Right.
have said so many
Of course,
times.
but
We
it's
got
true.
similar
If you just be
generation,
honest
too.
with people and be truthful and just tell them what they're doing wrong and why they're doing it wrong and how to do it right, but they don't know. They don't understand. These people that own these companies have given their life to some of their employees, their dedication, they've raised their families. How can I tell them that they're doing everything wrong when they've raised their families and they're doing a lot? I need to explain to them what they need to do to get out.
Yeah.
Okay? Not that they're doing it wrong, but they don't know how to do it any differently. Because nobody's taught them. So I become the teacher, right? Now I'm the teacher, okay? So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
But I don't think most business owners are aware or realize that your service exists.
You know,
I agree.
that's
was
true.
gonna
But
say,
I actually
yeah.
think that it should be is most people that are in business should come see a person like you at least
yeah.
a few years in to help them guide for their business.
No doubt about it.
I know. And is there a mentoring side of you, like that could?
There is. I
mean,
haven't really had. What I tell them is this: look, I'm going to give you my free book. Okay, I'm going to send you the link or send you a free book.
Yeah.
When you read it, call me back.
Yeah.
Okay. If you don't read it, how am I going to help you?
Yeah.
Right? So they need to understand what I'm going to do. Now, a lot of them don't, and I still help them, of course. But it's always great if they read the damn book.
Right.
They understand my mentality.
Right.
That book was written for them to
say who
understand
you're dealing with.
on what we need to do to get to the finish line. Because it's all about the finish line, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's kind of like, being a designer.
Yeah.
Being
The
a
reveal.
designer is an artist. You're an artist. Well, you're an artist in what you do. I'm an artist in what I do.
But you're a
100%.
designer as well because you're designing
Deals.
A plan.
deals.
Deals.
You're
Yeah.
helping people sell
But,
their businesses.
I am doing the art of the deal every day.
You are.
Yeah.
Every day I'm doing
Absolutely.
the art of the deal.
And it's fascinating that you do now get to have such a different perspective for each of these businesses. Like you get to almost start fresh every time you're bringing a new business to market.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's
It
fun.
is. Yeah,
and
that's
it's
like
different.
so different.
It's never the same.
Correct.
So it's always a
There's
challenge.
a lot of.
And you recently designed a television show, Chefed Up, that you're
Yeah.
starring
So
in.
Chefed Up is going. It's been a thing of mine. We got the trademark not too long ago. The concept is me having fun with chefs and celebrities, right? So being I love to cook, we go out, we go to restaurants and celebrities, and we just did Paul Castronova's house at his
fun.
house. We just did a #1 Italian restaurant in Orlando. So I go out now and I cook with chefs.
which
in my
people
chef
can see
cook.
on YouTube.
And then they eat
Right
my
now.
cheese, okay,
Uh-huh.
and my olive oil, because
Yep.
obviously I'm in the olive oil
Yes.
business, caliendofoods.com.
Mm-hmm.
So cheese and olive oil. So I'm still in the food business
Right.
every day.
Right.
You know-
You've just been collecting these businesses
Yeah.
along the way.
So this is kind of a passionate thing for me to try to go out there and have fun. But the whole idea is to expose the chefs, make new dishes, have fun, and then we eat the dish and we go, oh my God, that's chefed up. Right? So it's a fun thing to it, right? So don't be
Yeah.
surprised in the next couple of years. I have people all over the country going, oh my goodness, this
That's
is chefed
chefed
up.
up.
Right?
I
It's just
love-
chefed up, right? So
Yep.
so that's one of the goals.
I love that.
The
The future looks bright that way.
So I know we're getting short on time. So if you guys want to ask me any other questions and
No, we really appreciate you coming in today and going through all of this.
Great energy.
last
great
thing we didn't talk about,
conversation.
which I think is important to end on, okay, is the movie.
I was just going to ask you.
Right, so-
you
so-
produced a movie. You started the movie.
Yes. So here's
got
a
a
dream as a
great little
kid, right?
story.
You're a little Italian kid growing up in an Italian family. What do you watch as a kid? Of course you watch Goodfellas, right?
Godfather.
Of course you watch The Godfather, Casino. You watch those movies. So as a kid, I always said, look, I want to be in a movie one day. Like, who doesn't want to be in a movie? Right? I don't care what anybody says. I want to be in a mafia movie. So in 2020, COVID happens.
Right.
Everything goes
Perfect
to crap,
timing
right?
to build a movie.
I wind up being in this little movie set as an extra, right? Called Gravesend, and I meet some guys and Amana Sante who filmed the movie Gotti, and some other guys, and one of them comes up to me and says, "I got a great movie concept. We did a web series called Mob King. We had 4 series. We obviously don't have the funding right now." And I said, you know what? I always wanted to be in a movie. What would be better than me actually funding the movie, controlling the whole thing, okay, and then
Acting in it.
rewriting the actual script, okay, with my character, okay, and then basically filming a movie and then figuring out how to sell the movie. One of the hardest things
You
is the
should be-
movie business is to make money.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. Everybody invests in movies, nobody makes money. So I figured, this is a dream come true. If I make my money back, it's a plus. If I break even, it's a win. Okay?
Yep.
I said, I'm going to make a movie. Crystal Harvey, who became the line producer, who manages the back end, she's the one that kind of helped wrote all these books, and she's been
Right,
around
right.
16, 17 years.
With you.
Yes, I said,
Yeah.
you're the line producer. You run everything. You manage all the back end, because I don't do back end. I'm front end, right? I have three ladies that work with me now, Crystal, Carla, and Claudia, and it takes
All the C's.
3 seasoned women, just to keep up with me. 3 seasoned women, and we're talking about seasoned women. These girls are amazing, right?
Hardworking,
Amazing,
good juggling.
You have a good team behind you.
So after COVID, the only state that was open was
Florida.
Right. So I said,
So
okay,
brilliant.
we're going to get everybody cheap. We're going to bring them down from L.A., and we got some amazing actors, James Russo, who was Donnie Brasco, and Django Unchained,
You
and
must
Beverly
have
Hills
had the
Cop.
best time.
So it was an amazing time. A guy, Ciro DiPaggio, who kind of dreamed this up, who actually did 19 years in prison, who came out, who decided he's going to make this movie, and it was his idea. And it was about a guy who went to prison for 19 years and then came out, and the family tried to kill him. Okay? So, nice. Isn't that wonderful? Right? So I said, I love the concept. So, anyways, we made a movie. Okay.
And you shot it in Florida.
Shot it all in Florida. Killed 3 people in my house, in my truck.
My
I
gosh.
mean, it was amazing. Amazing actors, amazing story. It's a mafia drama, a family drama. It's not your typical "let me go collect my money" mafia movie.
Yeah.
Okay? It's really kind of a
Hierarchy,
very on the
kinda.
edge, on the edge of your seat watching the movie. So, anyways, we filmed it. We finished it. I went to the AFM, American Film Festival
Yep.
in California.
Yep.
I bought all the advertising. Okay, I controlled the whole thing. And what I mean by that is everywhere you walked in that place was Mob King.
Right.
They had no idea who Mob King was or who I was. Okay, and we dominated it. And then we wound up signing a deal with Gravitas, which is a very big distributor.
Yes, it is.
Who took Mob King
So where
on.
can people see it now?
Amazon, Tubi, Pluto, on demand. It just launched on May 2nd in 99 territories.
Amazing.
In 16 different languages on May 2nd of this year.
Were any of your kids extras or any?
Yes.
Yeah.
3 of them. First scene, my son's in the jail scene. My mother loved that. What are you taking after your father? You got your son in prison now. I'm like, Ma, it's a
That's
movie.
funny.
My Isabella was my daughter in the movie. She was in a scene. My son Giovanni was on the yacht in the movie.
So good.
So, yeah, it was an amazing story. But there's an accomplishment that I never thought I would be able to do in my life. I never thought I was going to be able to produce a movie and star in a movie and sell a movie.
And you did it.
And that's what I mean. If you dream it, you could achieve it.
You really
Correct.
can.
The problem with people is they just don't believe in their dreams and they don't
You have
go
to follow
after
them. You have to go after
You just
them.
not
And
give
you
up.
just can't give up. I mean,
You can't give up.
it is. You
can't give
just
up.
have to get back up, be that bubble.
Yep. But it's
The
been
weeble
great to
wobble.
be on the podcast. I know we
Thank you
gotta,
so
Anthony,
much for
thanks for coming
having
in
us.
today.
Thank you. Hopefully you
It's
guys
so
had
much fun.
No charge for the entertainment.
Okay, great.
Just so you know, it's free. Once again.
The Eye Design Lab.
Yeah, and we will get you some Caliendo olive oil
I
and some
look
cheese.
forward
by the way.
to
All right,
that.
so we're going to drop that off to you guys. Okay?
Amazing.
All right,
Thank
great
you.
meeting you.
The
Thank you
same.
for having me. It's been great to be here.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you. Eye Design Lab.
iDesign Labs podcast is an SW Group production in association with the 5-Star and TW Interiors. To learn more about iDesign Lab or TW Interiors, please visit twinteriors.com.